Welcome to Overseers of Freedom. I'm Amy Earle, and I'm here with Kimberly Lowry and Amanda Bush. And today we are going to be talking about Dumbing Us Down, the Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling by John Taylor Gatto. And this conversation, I can already tell from our pre-conversation, is going to be fire. So listen up. We have a lot of thoughts as three experienced homeschoolers, and we've been through the program. We know the ins and the outs. And now I feel like we are reading this and commenting as observers of what is happening. I still have a daughter that is in middle school. Kimberly still has some kids in school, but we've been around enough that we really have become observers of what's happening in the public school system. And I think as an observer, you get a different I know as an observer, you get a different perspective than somebody who is participating and reliant on a system. And so that, I think, is the perspective that we're bringing today is the kind of what we are seeing, our observations of what we are seeing. So Kimberly, do you want to start us off? Share a little bit about.
Sure. Like I talked about in the intro, the first time I read this book, it made me angry because I thought, these are not the lessons that I learned in school. These are not the things that my kids learned in school. This is crazy. And it just made me angry. And then this time I read it, it just made me sad because I can see the problems that are happening. I can, because I'm 12 years down the road, 15 years down the road from when I read it the first time. Like you said, I am observing what's happening now that I've kind of let my love of public school go. And I can observe what's happening. So when I first started to homeschool, it wasn't because I thought the public schools were bad. I had a daughter that had a lot of social anxiety, and I just wanted the lifestyle that homeschool could provide because I had some friends that were doing homeschool, and I liked their family dynamics and that their evenings weren't all taken up with homework and they could take vacations whenever they wanted. And there was a lot of things about homeschool that appealed to me. It wasn't because I was upset with the public school system in any way. But now that I've had my kids out of public school for so long, I can see the problems that are in public school. Once you're out of it, and once it's easier to question it, right? It's easier to say, oh, I can see this happening, or I can see this happening. Once you remove yourself from the situation. And so I feel like now I'm 15 years out of that. It's easier to see the problems with public school.
Absolutely. And I think what Amy was saying about being observers is like right on point. I hadn't thought about that till she said it, because I watch what's going on and I hear things and I see what's in the news and I read these books and I'm shocked, I guess you would say, by what is going on. And I have had a hard time grasping why there are still children in public school and realizing that because I am so detached, because I am no longer part of that system, it completely changes my perspective and the way I see things, the way I think about things. And I think when you step back, it's like when, as a parent, I can watch what my children are doing, choices my kids are making, and things that are happening with them and their friends. And I can see things clearer because I am not in the middle of the emotions, in the middle of the chaos of what they are living. And I think we, the three of us, have that same perspective because we are so far detached from the public school system, but not from the education system. Like, we know the difference and have learned the difference from personal experience about how education and schooling are not in any way the same thing. Whereas for decades, we have been brainwashed by the public school system and by the government to believe that education and schooling are the same thing, and they're just not. And that's what this book really gets into, is how the dumbing us down, the way that for generation after generation after generation, we've just gotten a little more compliant, a little less able to think, a little more willing to believe the experts and what happened to our parents and then what happened to us, what we learned, and we were just taken down the next level and then taken down one more level. And then you see what the children of our children, it's kind of in that age that what they are going to be. I look at my grandson and I think about the world he is going to grow up in, and it is heartbreaking that we've gone from trusting the experts to a total and complete lack of morality, and it's devastating. And that's, I think, for me, what that book showed is it was the preparation of where we were headed, because he wrote this book in 1990, 95, and right after I graduated from high school. And what year did I graduate? 93. So the book he's writing was about the school system I attended, and it's crazy to look back at that. That was my school system that he is talking about. And if that was 20, 30 years ago, how much has it even gotten worse since then?
Well, and if you're listening to this, I want to invite you, especially if you're listening to this and you are part of the public school system, I want to invite you to just suspend some belief, maybe let down your guard just a little bit. First, I want to say it is not our intention at all to attack or to blame or to do, like, we simply just want to have a conversation. But when you're in the system, so, and this is as I'm listening to Amanda and Kimberly talk about this, when you're in the system and you're dependent on it, there's a reason. And the reason might be you work, you don't have time, you don't have the education. Maybe I hear a lot, I could never do that. That's just kind of a blanket statement that comes out. I could never do that. I could never homeschool my kids. And so for whatever reason, there's a reason you're in this system. And as we're talking about this, I just invite you to kind of listen with an open heart to this, because truly what we are doing is we are sounding an alarm. I think the alarm that John Taylor Gatto sounded 30 years ago it seemed a little preliminary. It was like, but wait, we're doing okay. We're still okay. And what Amanda was just describing is how in 30 years we went from we're still doing okay to literally our country is in flames, politically, economically, morally. The family is in crisis. We see crisis across the board, spiritually, all of these things. And so I invite you to kind of listen, but what you are going to hear is an alarm. It is that because you're in the system, it's hard to see it. And so we're just inviting you to step back a little bit, see what we see. And what's so difficult, and the book that we're reading is really short. Like, it's several essays that are combined. You can, how long is the audio? Probably a couple hours.
I listened on the way to Houston, and finished it. So 3 hours,
yeah,
4 hours maybe.
And if you don't have the whole book, you can find the PDF online of The 7 Lesson School Teacher. Like, just start there. That's a few pages long, and it's a great place to start. And then let's kind of dive in a little bit to, Amanda, you were talking about this, the dumbing down. Let's take a deep dive into that.
I do. I really want to get into that. And this goes with that. I want to address what you said, because I hear it a lot too. I could never do that. Here's what I want to say to you. If you really believe you couldn't do it, because every one of us, the three of us, had serious doubts. You cannot go into homeschooling your children without doubts. I mean, no one, I can't think of anyone I know who'd started homeschooling was like, I've got this. And if they did, they learned really quick that they didn't get it. And, but what I can promise you is that you know your children better than any stranger does. And God gave you those children, and He will tell you and He will guide you through the process of raising them up to be the people that He sent them here to be. And that only you are entitled to that revelation. And it is your job, and you can do it, and it's your responsibility.
Let me say this, like, really, like, what do your kids need that you cannot give them? Like,
Nothing.
Think about that. What is happening in those 12, 13 years that you cannot provide? Like, I don't have the money to do that. Everything, it's literally in your pocket on your phone. Everything you need to know, everything they need to know, like in regards to academics. But is that what's important? Like, what is important to your kids? And I really want to challenge this idea of, are your children better off for 13 years? And for some kids, it's 15 years because of the pre-K program. For you have them, I see these cute little reels and they're like, you only have your kids for 18 years and like you need to have, right? Like there's all these things, but then we're going to take 9 months of every year for 15 years and give your children to someone else. What the actual hell? Like literally, what? So I just did this, I did a presentation at an event, and my husband was in Afghanistan for 9 months. Well, Afghanistan and other places. Anyways, he was out of our home through training and rotations for 9 months of the year for 4 years. He was never here. The damage that did to our family with him being gone. And as I'm describing this, literally you're getting your babies up at the butt crack of dawn and shoving them out to school, putting them on a bus. They're coming home. They're exhausted. They're grumpy. They're picking up behavior and information that really no kid should have. You feed them, you sit down, you spend hours doing their homework, and then you probably do soccer or some kind of sport, and then you get them into bed. Tell me, I know I'm going too far into this, but like really, what is that serving your child? I would, here's what I would say. Bring your kid home, sleep in, get up, make breakfast, dance, turn on music, read a book, write in a journal, go for a walk outside. And I'm talking about the 15-year-old. Like, enjoy this time with them. You do not have to give them away. There's nothing special happening at school that you cannot provide for them. And okay, sorry. That's where I went with like, you have what you need.
And I think we need to, sorry, Kimberly. I think we need to say that. Like you're like feeling like we're going a little too far. I think before you can even open your ideas or open yourself to the idea of what John Gatto is saying, you have to have your mind open to the idea that school might not be the right place. That school is not the be-all, end-all only answer. And that not only may it not be the right place, there's a really good chance it is the wrong place. And I think that's what he shows us. Because when you start feeling the kind of things that Amy's describing about really sending your babies off to people who you actually don't know, like you literally do not, we are so careful about who we trust to babysit our children. We are so careful about who we allow into our home. We're careful about how much social media they have. We're careful about the video games they watch, about the TV they watch. And yet, butt crack of dawn, as Amy says, we're pushing them out the door to a building down the road where we're not even allowed to go in without checking in and proving that we have a right to be there, and then probably being escorted to a room if you're even allowed to be there. And we're sending our children there and trusting that the experts are doing what is right by them by our standards and not by theirs.
We can't question the curriculum. We can't question the we can't question who is teaching. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the standards, or that's not the word, but
moral character or anything like that. Their beliefs. Yeah.
Like we have no, and when you look at it historically, why is there a public school? There is a public school historically for the poor, for the lowest class that could not educate their children elsewhere. And what we have been programmed to believe is that we can't do that. That 4-year degree that somebody goes and gets at school gives them everything that they need to know about how to raise our child. Bullshit. Like that 4-year degree does not give you everything that you need to know. Do you know what gives me everything I needed to know about my child? I'm their mother. Mm-hmm. God gave me the inspiration. He teaches me. And the worry that we have is, my kids will drive me crazy. I don't have the patience to do it. I won't be able to make them. They won't do their homework if I don't make them. No, guess what? You are not going to spend 8 hours every day, 9 months out of the year for 15 years making your kids fill out worksheets.
Yeah.
That is hell.
He even talks in this book that it takes on the average about 100 hours to teach kids everything they need to know for math and reading once they're ready. So if they can learn that in 100 hours, why are we giving them to the public schools for 13 years? And he also says in the book that in Massachusetts, I believe that public school was started, that the literacy rate in Massachusetts was 98%. And after they instituted compulsory education, it never got above 91%. So that's right there, proof that being in school all day, every day is not getting you everything that you hoped it would. But one of the things that you guys were talking about that reminded me, one of the reasons I was so sad reading this book is because kids need time to be kids, and there is a better way, and that we can do it better. And that's one of the reasons I was so sad, because so many parents don't know that there's another way. And all these kids are, gone all day long every day. And then they come home and have soccer and piano and this and that. And then they have homework and then they go to bed. And he talks in here about how we need families to be more involved. And the school system is taking families away from the kids. And that's a huge, huge problem in our society right now.
Well, and I think one of the things that just came to me as you were talking about that, like the whole, we put them in so young and they're like taught these rules. The difference between my oldest son and my youngest son. My oldest son was in public school until 4th grade. And my youngest, we brought him home after kindergarten. And my youngest is our crazy, he's super fun. He's a comedian. He's very outgoing. He is very sure of himself. He shares his opinions and speaks up. And my older son is very much a rule follower. And there is a time and a place to do certain things. And when we brought them home, and with Carter, our youngest, I remember having those thoughts of, I need to stop him from doing that. He needs to learn to sit still. He needs to learn. And then thinking, because of my mentors that I was working with homeschooling, that it's okay to just let him be a boy. If he just wants to be, and heaven forbid you say that, it's okay to just let him be a boy. And when he was being rambunctious and out of control and had all this energy, rather than trying to figure out how to get him to sit down and read a book with me, it's like, what do you want to do? Let's go outside and play. Let's go climb a tree. Let's go dig a hole. Let's do something with all of this energy. And then he would come and sit by me and we would cuddle and read books once he got that energy out. rather than me determining when he needed to sit quietly. And I can't, in the short difference, the 3-year difference between my two boys in public school and out of public school when they were so young, I know that that had a huge part to play in. There is a horrible thing that happens, especially in little boys between 3rd and 4th grade, where they go from a love of learning to a hate of learning. And you will see this across the board in every elementary school. And it has to do with that. So many years of being beaten down, and the concept of sit quietly, obey, follow the rules, do it the right way, that light is taken away from them. And I now look at little boys that age, and now that my children are adults, and it is heartbreaking, because when you see things, I remember at the time feeling like my kids were so old and they needed to learn these things now. Now my kids are in their 20s, and I realize they do learn it. That 100 years thing is completely true, because we did that with all of our kids. We learned that when they were ready to learn something, they just learned it. We didn't decide when they were going to learn it.
Look at what you just were describing is what has happened to boys, young men, and men because of the school system. We have programmed out of them their divine nature, the core of who they are. Like, they are supposed to be active and curious and protective and rough and tumble. And yes, I'm saying all of these things that I believe that there is a divine nature to little boys, that we want them to sit down and be quiet and follow the rules. And when you're doing that to a kindergartner, like that spirit. And I remember the same thing with Joshua, bringing him home, and we were trying to do a spelling test. This is back when we were doing school at home. And I'm trying to do a spelling test, and he's like turning circles, and he's like wandering, like looking around. And I was trying to get him to just, Joshua, I need you just to focus. Can you focus? And we were having to like really adapt the environment to meet his energy. And now, of course, I've come so much further from trying to get my first grader to do spelling tests. But this idea of, I think we are not doing our boys any kind of good service by putting them in an environment that is telling them that their divine nature is wrong, and that for this amount of time, you have to just sit and focus. And no wonder half the country is on like ADHD medicine.
Love all of that. I know it's super, I can see it in your face. It's so unnerving to say these things.
Yeah.
In a society that tells us these things aren't true, and that if you believe these things, there's something wrong with you.
Well, and that it's offensive, and it's that what we're doing is we're attacking individuals, and there could be people listening to this that take offense to what we're saying right now. But this is where, like, if you're sounding an alarm, you have to be willing to be offensive. And you know what? In this crazy, I'm going to try really hard. I'm not going to swear because I was going to use another word. In this crazy culture that we have right now, it's okay for me to be offensive, because what is happening is ridiculous. And somebody has to say the emperor is freaking naked.
Yes.
And that,
yes.
I will be that person that says, you know what? No, boys have an energy. I raised 3 of them. And guess what? They were all 3 totally different personalities, different everything. But there's some divine nature happening there. Yeah. And this idea that we have to put everybody on the same path and teach them all the exact same things, that they should all end up as the same product? Isn't this come back to this idea of what is equality, right? Is it equity in outcome or equality of opportunity? And what we're saying is the outcome has to be equal. Everybody has to go through this program and turn out the exact same. Every single person in this country is going to take the same ACT score test and same questions and will be compared to everybody else as how well they did on those. That is equality of outcome, not of opportunity. And if you give everybody the opportunity to grow into the person that they were meant to be, you cannot do that in a compulsory public school education.
Absolutely. What is the Einstein quote about the fish?
Yes. And actually, this is what I will say. Actually, you can do that if your student is the one who's going to rise to the top in that area. Like I would say that there are kids out there, and I'm talking purely academically, because morally, get your kids out of school. But academically, there are people who thrive in that environment and do well. But there are so many others who are having to be like squished into that, what is the round peg, square hole?
Yeah.
Into that place.
And I would even challenge the kids that academically do well there would do better in a homeschool academic situation. Because the children who are thriving academically are still going to be held back by the kids that are in the wrong situation.
Yeah.
And so if you have a child who is thriving academically in the public school, I would challenge that they would do significantly better in a homeschool education system than they could ever do in the public school system. Because like Amy said, everything you need to know is on your freaking phone.
Yeah.
If I can build a multi-six-figure business off one of these things, you can educate your children through high school on one of these things. I promise you, every system you need is there. I don't know math. I don't know chemistry. I don't. Like, when it came time to teach my kids things that they wanted to learn and were ready to learn, we just went to the internet. We found classes. We hired mentors. My middle son needed someone to teach him that wasn't me once he got to like scholar phase. And my husband was working a job that just, he wasn't able to do that. We hired a mentor and he had an absolutely fabulous, and it wasn't a 6-year long expensive process. I mean, Amy did the same. She worked with him for like a semester and it was amazing, the growth in him. And one, it wasn't expensive, and two, I was able to find exactly what he needed, the person he needed that was going to give him the experiences he needed and challenge him in the way he needed. And I was able to choose someone who morally aligned with our morals. And so he was learning and having discussions where I knew that he was morally safe and protected from the insaneness. And he's now 22. So we're talking about things that happened 7 years ago. Can we talk about what happened yesterday with the woman with the prosthetic? No, the man with the prosthetic top in Ontario. Can we go there?
Go for it.
Who wants to go there with it? We'll take this back to the book as far as the things he was talking about learning to just accept what you're being told.
Well, let's just start by saying, and we quoted this in our last podcast, when the intro to this, that he's never in all of his years of teaching heard anybody say that their school is a school that has problems. That every parent out there thinks that their school is one of the good ones. And I've heard that from so many people. I know that there's problems out there, but our school is one of the good ones. And I want to say that I know there's so many teachers out there working so hard for these kids and they're not getting paid enough and they love the kids and they're doing their best. It's not the problem with the teachers. It's the system that has the problem. It's the system that's broken. And no matter how much money we put into it, no matter how many hours, no matter how loyal we are, the system is never going to work because the system is the problem. And so I think that that's a distinction that we need to make.
We should take that clip and put it at the beginning. Like, this is a disclosure. Some of my greatest friends are teachers. It's so selfless what they are doing when we're talking about spending 9 months of the year all day long taking care of other people's children in that system with your hands tied behind your back. Like, this is hats off to teachers. Like, I absolutely, Kimberly, I'm glad that you shared that, because everything that we're talking about right now, we're attacking the system, not the teachers. And so I appreciate that.
So on that note, Amanda, talk away.
So if you're not aware of what's happening, there is a teacher, male teacher, genetic male teacher in Ontario, Canada, who wore extremely large prosthetic breasts, incredibly inappropriate, vulgar. It's a vulgar image, and to the school. And when video got out and people said anything, the school came back and said, this is a human rights thing, and she has, whatever, the right to do whatever he wants. And whose rights are more important? The teacher's rights in this situation, or your rights as the parent and your children's rights to be protected from an overly sexualized society? Our children, there's a reason that for centuries we have protected our children from being sexualized at a young age. And it's not just, moral is a huge part of it, but it's not just morally. It has to do with a child's ability to comprehend certain things, and what it does when you look at children who are overly sexualized at a young age, the long-term effects and the damage that does. And we have gotten to a place in our society where I was saying earlier about our parents let go a little bit, we let go a little bit, like we just gave up a little more and gave up a little more, to where now we're allowing the school system, and again, not the teachers. I love all of my friend teachers. I know they're doing everything they can in a broken system. But now it's become to where our society is so morally broken that the thought of allowing our children no amount of education, even if my child was getting the best education possible and was going to come out a Harvard scholar after 12 years, I could not sacrifice their morals, their ability to determine right and wrong. Our country was founded on morals, like the belief in God, the knowledge of right and wrong and good and bad, true, false, natural laws, that there was a moral, correct way to do things. There was a way to be a gentleman. There was a way to be a lady of society. There was a way to act and to speak to other people, and that other people mattered. And we have gotten so far from it that now the only thing that matters is that you don't offend me. If you offend me, then you're a horrible person. And like when Amy was saying, we might offend some people, we'll probably offend some people. But I am a firm believer in you don't have a right not to be offended.
Right. That is not in the Constitution.
Nope.
The right to life, liberty, and to not be offended.
Yeah.
let's say this. So this clip starts circling around Instagram, and I had to like really take a look at it. I was like, what is happening here? Until I realized what was happening here. And it's a shop teacher is what it appears to be, at least the clip I saw. A shop teacher who has these ginormous, they must be like, if you were talking about bra size, like size Z, like they are ginormous. And the question here becomes, that like what is appropriate in our schools? Like, okay, that is your life. That's what you do. Is that an appropriate thing to bring in to a classroom? Because what it is going to do is it's a distraction. It's going to make kids go, whoa, what is going on? What is that? It brings all of the focus away from the schooling, and the focus is now all on the teacher and the teacher's like beliefs and their compass and everything that it puts all the focus on the teacher instead of the students. And there's an agenda. There is an agenda there. And this is what is happening is in our society and in our culture, we have stopped defining truth. Truth has become an abstract term, and truth is whatever you want it to be. And there is danger in no longer having truth. So we know that math and mathematics, if we are going to do something with mathematics, that 2 + 3 = 5. No matter how much I want to believe that 2 + 3 = 10, I cannot get 10 apples when I put 2 and 3 together. It is impossible. That is just a fact. Now, we can see that in math, at least for the time being. We have taken that out of science. We have taken that out of history. We have taken that out of human conduct. We have taken any kind of truth or a basis upon the foundation that we build everything upon. We have removed that, and we have said, what truth is what makes you feel good. And so you can know that it's true for you if you feel good in the moment. That is a problem for all of society. For a society to be healthy and strong, there has to be standards upon which all behavior can be judged. There has to be standards upon which we say, this is right and this is wrong. This is true. This is false. This is good and this is bad. And those are the first lessons that we should be teaching our children. And what's happened is parents don't even know what is right and wrong anymore. And we send our kids to school and they certainly don't know what is right or wrong because they have to be inclusive of everybody. And so this word inclusivity, where we bring in everybody's truth, this has caused the decay of freedom and overseers of freedom. If we get down to the nitty gritty of this, the disillusion, is that the right word? Dissolving the disillusion of right and wrong, of true and false, of good and bad, has led to the destruction of freedom. It has led to the demise of families. It has led to the economic collapse, because what we have is no longer here is a behavior that we are striving for. There used to be an American dream, and everybody could agree on what the American dream was. We want to be able to have a home, have a good job, have sufficient for our needs, raise our children up so that they would have more than we have. There was a standard out there. And let's go ask anybody, go ask 100 people on the street what the American dream is. We have no common ground. And this happened, I believe, firmly, when we removed God from the situation. And this comes back, I can't remember if we talked about it on the last video, is that it's the law of the vital few. And it can work both ways. And when you have 20% of the people who are making the decisions for everybody because they are loud enough, they're noisy enough, they're disruptive enough. That's a natural law. 20% of people can cause enormous disruption and change to a society. And we saw this happen. 80% of the people are just like us, are listening and nodding their heads and saying, yeah, I know this is crazy, but we don't know what to do. And that's because the 20% are so loud and so disruptive. And even as we're talking, we're like, the 20% is going to come after us and they're going to say bad things. And so we see things like this happening. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is your child worth letting the 20%, and I would even venture, like now I would say it's 20. I think when they started, it was probably like 3%. And they were just so loud that it built and it's reached a crescendo. Yeah, we've lost our moral compass. And if raising children demands a moral compass, it demands it. And they are not getting it at school. So if they're spending every waking hour at school and you have, like, count up the hours that you have with your child, what, they're going to get all their morals at Sunday school, an hour a week? Like, how are you going to condition them and help them to combat that attack on them?
And I also want to say the law of the vital few. Go ahead. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. I was going to say the law of the vital few also operates in the opposite way too, right? It only takes 20% of us to make a huge difference for good in the world. We don't have to have 100%. We don't have to have 80%. We only have to have 20% to make a big difference. So, and I think a lot of people are waking up to the problems in public school. There's so many more homeschoolers now. And I think when people during the pandemic had to homeschool their kids and they saw that they could do it, gave them the confidence to continue. So, yeah, that's what I want to say.
Oh, I love that. And I think recognizing that we can do so much more than school at home. That the joy of bringing your children home from school is so much more than bringing school home. It's the best thing about bringing your children home from school is getting your kids out of school, removing school. We actually had to remove the word school from our vocabulary for the first year because our children had been so traumatized. And they were in great schools. They had amazing teachers, but it was the system, right, that just forced these teachers to work a certain way. And you get to bring your kids home and raise them in your home rather than being raised in school. And that is the greatest gift you can give your kids, is to raise them up to be. We have to be preparing our kids for what's coming next. And it's so much more than whether or not they know chemistry. Our world needs the 20% of us to speak up. We all have a social media platform, speak up on different levels. And every time I share my beliefs about freedom, two things happen. I lose a bunch of followers and I get a million DMs from women and moms who are so relieved to hear someone speak out and to share their opinions and to say what they're thinking that they're too afraid to say. And the 20%, we are so much more than 20%. We are so much more than a majority. What the 20%ers who are currently running us off the rails, they are so loud and they come across as, they are the voice of the media. They are the voice of the politicians. They are the voice with the microphone right now. But there are more of us than there are of them. And we have to step through our fear and start speaking up so that we can become that 20% and being willing to say, I stand with those who are being silent. and to no longer be silent, because that, and bringing our kids home and teaching the only way you can teach your children to stand against the current mob mindset is to get them out of public school. You cannot raise your children in the current public school system and teach them to stand against what is happening in our society. I honestly, truly believe that, because you are giving your children more, you're giving that curriculum. And when you read the seven lesson school teacher, when you read what the curriculum of the public school system is, and you realize that is the curriculum your children are actually being taught, you realize you can't have that. And they will win if your children are with them 6-8 hours a day for 13, 14, 15 years. You can't save your child from that when that's where they're being educated. And I know that's super controversial, but.
Right. And I've heard people say, well, I want my kids to be in public school to be the good example. Like, you're sacrificing your kids to that, to like a grown-up can't even fix that system. A grown-up can't stand against that. And you're going to put your kids in there and think that they're supposed to stand up and save the public school system, like, and the kids around them. I mean, I'm sure your kids can be a good example to their friends, but it is not their responsibility to save the school. I'm just going to say it. It's not their responsibility. And they can't. The pressure, like, you can't expect them.
The system, your 4-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, or your 16-year-old who has so much pressure on them coming from everywhere, including themselves, to put the pressure on them that they have to stand for so many. It's hard enough for them to stand for what is right in the couple hours of evening that they might be spending hanging out with their buddies. To then put them in a situation where the people in authority is who they're having to stand against. That's just,
well, and the problem is it's not just that. It's that at home they're getting your influence, right? And so you've given them a strong foundation. They have a strong belief. They know that they need to be a light. But would you put your child into a position where they are just getting beat down, worn down, like that constant wearing down?
Yeah, it's like putting them into a den of lions every day and saying you're supposed to keep their mouth shut. Like, you're supposed to tame the lions here.
Well, and we had actually a situation, Joshua, when he was probably 12 or 13, he was on a swim team, and his coach called Jake and I in and said, I need to talk to you about Josh. And we were like, okay. And he said, you need to put this kid in school. Like, he is such a good kid. He needs to be where he can be influencing other people. He needs to be a light. He needs to be going to school and I mean, I just laughed. And I was like, yeah, and he's going to keep being a light, and the impact that he is going to have on the world because I am protecting his light right now. That is my responsibility as a parent, is to protect him. So I am going to protect him. And now guess what? He's 22 years old. He has a beautiful testimony and spirit, and he is a light, and he knows how to withstand the evils of the day because he was protected long enough to hold that, so that now he can go out and be a change and a force for good. And so, yeah, if somebody is telling you, you need to go to school, your kids need to go to school so that they can be the light. Not today. Today, we have reached a level that we are sounding the alarm. I was looking recently, so Betsy's 13. She's the last one home with us. And I was like, certainly there has to be a school she could go to. This is me. Like, certainly. So I start looking. I am like desperate.
There's
looking.
Got to be someone I can pay some amount of money, any amount of money.
Yes. Money's not an option, or not a, what is it? Money's not a object. What is it? What's the phrase?
Money's not an object. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm like, certainly. So I am scrolling, looking. And it was funny because Like most of the schools, I was like, no, no, no. And then I found this one that I was like, maybe this is the one. And I don't want to get into too many details because you could probably find the school, but it was like very ideal in what it was very alternative. I mean, it was like so alternative and no grades and lots of outdoor time and like all of this stuff. And I was like, anyways, I was like, I send the link to Jake and I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? And so he starts looking, but then he starts going through like the staff and their degree, like all of this stuff. And we realize that their focus is not in alignment with ours. He's like, this is like the exact opposite of like what we, and Betsy's as this age, this middle school age, they're so impressionable. And I was like, everything looked really good. Everything looked really good. And I was like, oh, I could be really tempted to go this route. But then when you really dive into it, and this reminds me of what Kim was saying the other day, like when you really start looking at who are the people who are going to be spending that time with her and what influence will they have over her, and recognizing, no, like I cannot do that to her. And so I share that because literally, if me, after all of these years, can be like, can I find a school for my child? I relate. I get it. I know what you're going through. And at the end of the day, I realized that the best, and I work a full-time job. Jake works a full-time job. Like, and still us being here with Betsy and helping her is the best place for her. So
I know go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, can we really quick address just that? Like if someone did want to bring their kids home, if they're listening to this and they're thinking they're super overwhelmed, and how do you even do this? How do I do this? Like I brought my kids home when I owned a business that I was working about 35 hours a week working from home. I mean, it was work. It was a job. I had stuff I had to be doing, and I brought my kids home and I built a homeschool community because I didn't know anyone who was homeschooling. So let's talk a little bit about we probably have about 15 minutes here, if that. Can we talk about that? If someone did read this book, listen to what we have to say and decide, okay, yes, I do want to be open to this, but I have no idea where to start. Where do they start? What would be your suggestion, Kim?
I would say start with reading a Thomas Jefferson Education first, and then talk to other experienced homeschoolers that you trust. And then usually it takes 6 months to a year to detox from public school. And when we say that, we mean leave your kid alone. Read books together, cuddle on the couch, go have lunch, go to the playground, go to the library, and don't say the word school, like Amanda said. And then like we talked about in was our last podcast about the inventories and mentor meetings. That's where I would start. That's your toolbox in the beginning, I think.
Yeah, that I would start. Here's, if you're thinking about it, I would take the opportunity to go on a 3 to 4 to 6 month vacation. And I don't mean vacation like going somewhere and staying in a hotel. I mean just taking a break and just saying, and that's the detox that Kim is talking about, where you just say, you know what? Let's just live a family life. What if we got a book that we just read together as a family? What if we ate breakfast and dinner together? What if we had more family outings? Just focus on the family, focus on relationships. That would be the thing that I would do the most. And if they're older, so that's younger, they're just going to be celebrating. They're going to have a great time. And I think, Amanda, this is we could probably, what if we did like an intermediate call that's just on what would that look like? That's not about a book, but we just come on and we just are like, what would that look like? Because I think we could really give some suggestions, because the biggest fear in bringing kids home is that they will get behind. And that is the biggest fear. Like, I can't teach them and they'll get behind. And then what if I want to put them back in school and then they're behind? And I would love to but I think maybe we save that for the next one. We talk about what does that mean to be behind, and what are the steps that it would take to do that? I think that would be a really useful discussion.
I think it'd be good to talk too about what about their social, because that's always the next thing I hear too. Like my kid's so social, they need to be at school, and that's not, you don't want them to be there for the social. That's not
right.
The social that they're getting at school now is not good.
Is that really what you want to socialize them for? Like, is that really who you want them to be? And I think a big part of that for me was, like I said, I built a homeschool community in a community that did not have a homeschool community when I brought my kids home, because I needed the social. I was like, my kids had been in public school. I had been raised in a public school. I was like, I don't know what to do with these children all day. I'm going to go crazy. I had all those same thoughts. And so I went and found moms that thought like I did. And I helped socialize my children by socializing myself. And the other thing, my thought on bringing them home is, the best part about bringing your kids home is you get to know them. My relationship with my children, I get asked all the time, and I know all three of us do. How are you have that relationship? How are you so close to your kids? How did you raise children that are like that? And I did it because I am the one who raised them.
Yeah.
Because we were right there through it all. And when I let go of the school expectations, so much of the frustration that comes with raising children comes from other people's expectation, trying to get your kids to follow someone else's rules. When you know who your kids are, like knowing that Carter is an Enneagram 7 and just has all this energy and needs all this stuff, it just made it so easy to be like, okay, Carter just gets to be Carter, and he can be a goofball, and he can be loud, and he can be funny, and he can be social. And it's made him an absolutely amazing adult because we didn't try and make him someone else, and we got to know who he was.
But as I'm listening to this, I'm realizing that there's probably another piece that's going on here, because Amanda, when you're saying, like, I think what is happening is we have been so conditioned in how, like, what to think, like, this is what you do, this is how you do it. And if nobody is telling you what to do with your children, what do you do? Like, that is a big, scary thing that I know, like, I am not a baker or a cook or anything. I need a recipe. Like, when somebody says, put a little of this and a little of that and put it in a pan and make a delicious thing, I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't even know what a teaspoon looks like. I actually need to have a teaspoon to measure it. And I think that there's probably this, so we're saying, just bring them home and do these fun things. And they're like, literally, give me a recipe. Like, you're telling me to do something that is not comprehensible to me because I don't know how. And that is part of that, the part of the evolution of what has happened with getting closer and closer. Like, there's an expert who knows exactly what you should do. And if you follow what the expert tells you to do, then your child is going to come out the way that society tells your child to come out. And for you to jump ship without a recipe is probably absolutely terrifying. And then Amanda says, and go build a community. And they're like, what the actual? I don't know how to build a community. I need the handbook. Tell me how to build a community. So what if we come back in our next one and we give you some recipes, we give you some pieces, we give you some things, some actionable steps that you can take to start moving out of this environment and into a home environment. I think that would be really helpful.
I love that. because, we can talk for hours and hours about how to do this. But we all started terrified. I started terrified. My husband was like,
and
if
we
you
all
do
did
this,
it
this is on you.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did it different, and our kids are different. And so you'll get a little bit of that. So for now, go grab a copy of the 7 Lesson School Teacher. You can get the PDF if you haven't read it. And then get ready for our next podcast when we're going to just really talk about what can you do. We'll give you some tips and our tricks of how to bring your kids home and what that looks like. So thank you for joining us. This has been so fun, and we will see you on the next episode.